Hi, it's Winton Churchill with the Barefoot Consultants, and I'd like to welcome you today to our Freelance Friday call, where we talk about all things freelancing, particularly focused on baby boomers, people that are 50 plus, because they really have sort of a whole different characteristic and interest than people that are less than 50. And I will say that we have quite a number of people in their 40s in our program, but mostly people coming up to that age where they're looking at retirement or looking at developing a part-time freelance activity, as many adult Americans did in the last year. I think over 60% of adult Americans in part did some kind of freelancing. But what we're going to talk about today is how you can grow your creativity using freelancing. And this, sort of sprung from a topic I was having with one of our members. And, they were interested in not just going into freelancing and doing freelancing with things they already knew. They wanted to start there, but they wanted to find work that would help them grow their skill set. So there's a couple things that I want to talk about there. And yeah, Bob, good to see you. Yes, that background is actually, of course, it's virtual. I'm in Mexico right now, in a town called Cordoba, but this is from a great little bar restaurant place in San Miguel de Allende, and looking forward to getting back there in the next few months. It's a really fun little place, and I wish I could remember the name of it. It's changed names in the time I've been going to San Miguel, which has been about 12 years now, probably 3 or 4 times, but it's always been an excellent place to, have a meal, have a drink, wonderfully fresh food. They're kind of healthfully oriented. They have lots of vegan things on the menu and that kind of thing, but they also have excellent seafood, which, considering that they're, I don't know, 200 or 300 miles away from any coast, but they bring in seafood fresh all the time, and it's delicious. So good to see you. So we're going to talk about things, and one of the first one I want to talk about is proofreading. And some people have a negative reaction to the whole idea of proofreading because they say I'm not a grammar expert, or I'm not really that person that reads things that closely and understands the English language that well. There's just all kinds of reasons that they don't want to proofread. And what they don't realize is that there's power tools that help you do proofreading. It'd be like if somebody asked you to cut down a tree and you picked up the axe and started walking to the tree. That's how a lot of people approach proofreading. And I don't want you to pick up that axe. I want you to subscribe to a product like Grammarly that does all the proofreading for you. And what most freelancers don't realize when they get started is if you're doing proofreading for somebody, they're more interested that you have context about the subject matter of the business they're in, the industry they're in, or they might be an author or something like that. You have some knowledge of the topic they're writing on. It's like if somebody jumps up and says, in an article on a website, on an aviation website, that a 3-engine 747 ran off the runway today in Hong Kong. Does anybody know what's wrong with that statement? Can you type in the chat window just to say what's wrong with saying a 3-engine 747 ran off the runway today? Now, a typical grammar search would not find the issue. A typical, proofreader that just does proofreading but doesn't have knowledge of aviation would not find the massively embarrassing error there. but a 747 is a four-engine airplane. And yes, Bob, you got that right. Congratulations. And it's funny. There's millions of people working freelance that are doing proofreading and editing, and people, when they're first new to this, think that they want either the best proofreader in the world. Not true. Or they want the cheapest proofreader in the world. Not true. They want the best value. They want to get a proofreader that can find the proofreading, and you do this with Grammarly. You don't even, it's like chopping down that tree without a chainsaw. You wouldn't think of doing that. Why would you do that? It's not something you'd want to do. So here's the same thing. Grammarly and other products like it is your chainsaw. That's the thing that helps you make short work of the grammar, sentence structure, spelling aspect of that. And then you bring your domain of knowledge, whether it's aviation or working in the medical field or being an engineer or whatever your background is. That's what people that are buying proofreading services really want, is somebody that understands that. So that's something to consider as you go do that. And it's funny because I've often heard from people, once they start doing proofreading, they come up with comments like, wow, this is easier than I thought, because when you use Grammarly, you basically have a proofread version of the document in a matter of a minute or less. And then you can spend the rest of your time devoted to the context of that and making other suggestions that may be appropriate. So that's a cool thing to do there. And when they're doing proofreading, they say, these articles I'm proofreading are not too complicated. I never was a proofreader or an editor. I never had that title during my occupation, but I was doing it all the time. People would hand me a document and say, hey, would you look this over before I send it to a client? Or, here's the new policy on such and such. Would you read this to see if it makes sense? So a lot of us had a lot of experience. And I know Bob and I used to work together, 30 some years ago. And Bob used to put out a newsletter. So he was proofreading the newsletter when he put it out. That wasn't in his job title, and he was writing the articles. So it wasn't, he was doing that just to get that communication part of his job done. And many of you on this call and listening to the replay, I'm sure, have that same kind of background. So people would say, I could write some of these articles, and they start looking around in there for easy articles to write, and they learn how to create articles and move into writing in that way, even though they're not an author, even though they've never written a book, even though they've never been published. They've had 20 or 30 years of using their writing expertise to communicate with clients, employees, whatever it might be. Let's see, we've got a question here. How is proofreading with domain content experience different from editing for the same? It's not, but people hire editors falsely for the same reason. They don't, most people working through the Upwork system as freelance buyers are not fully aware of the importance of getting somebody that understands your content versus somebody that understands where the semicolons go. And so, I'm just amazed. We put out proofreading jobs from time to time and editing jobs and that sort of thing. And somebody will come along and they'll say, I'm the perfect person for your job, and they have no domain experience. Within our jobs that we post, we put things up there like, we're a training company. We help baby boomers where they're adult learners. We want to communicate things both visually and in text. And so they're not tuned into that. They're just on that one beam that I'm going to read that thing and I'm going to find all the mistakes. And so that's the difference. It makes sense to many of us that the domain ought to come into it, but you have somebody doing proofreading that worked in the pharmaceutical business for an article that was written for the construction business with no previous construction experience. So that's exactly the kind of problem that happens. But when the buyer understands through your proposal that you have context in their field or their domain of knowledge, that just lights up. I remember a guy that was doing some proofreading on articles about baseball card collecting, and he was an avid baseball card collector. He was like most people in our programs. I think he was in his late 50s at the time, and he bid on a proofreading job. He didn't bid the lowest price. He bid a little bit above the median price, and he got the job because it had to do with baseball cards. And in his proposal, he really emphasized that he was a lifelong collector of baseball cards, and he even talked about some of the cards that he collected over the years, that the buyer would say, wow. And you think about it, a buyer has a passion usually about the business that they're in. And in this case, that was the case. The buyer had a passion about baseball cards, and it never occurred to him to put that really into his job and feature in a way that it was a requirement that somebody that knew something about that. But he did mention baseball cards once in there. And so we teach people to pick on that. What is that domain of knowledge? And that's how we found the domain of knowledge. And that's how we jumped in there and got on a multi-year contract. And person to person, they're both people that love baseball cards. They're probably going to have a lot in common. And people like to do business, freelance buyers, with freelancers that they know, they like, and they trust. And who, to a baseball card, a person that has a business that revolves around baseball cards, finding a fellow traveler that has that expertise feels like a lot more interesting person to work with than some proofreader that claims they're great in a distant foreign country. So that's kind of what happened there. Then we had another sort of conversation I had is, what are things that people are surprised that they're good at? And one of the things is PowerPoint. Now, I don't know about you, but I had to learn PowerPoint whenever it came out. I was probably in the 90s sometime. And I kind of lived in that application because I was always presenting things about technology and different products and all that kind of stuff. And so I knew how to use it pretty well, and it's certainly gotten better over the years, that kind of thing. But I felt like it was a functional tool. In fact, when I left the corporate world in the year 2001, so that's been 22 years ago now, I thought if I never saw another PowerPoint presentation, I would be very happy. And about 2007, I moved to Mexico, and I started teaching people how to work online. Just a few friends that I knew had said, tell me how you're living in Mexico and able to work online and that kind of thing. And one of the things that I was using by then as a freelance buyer was these freelance networks to help me get my work done, the things I was delivering to clients back in the US. And so I found that the best way for me to communicate how to start freelancing was to create PowerPoint presentations, because that visual memory, we all know, like, this is my least favorite format. I've got some nice art in the background, but I love to be able to work with a combination of slides and what they call talking heads, so you can get a sense of the person, but you also see the visual stuff. And once you read it, a lot of you will remember it. It's not going to go away. And that reading of it and going back and forth between a live person and reading things helps anchor that the information in your brain. You'll retain a whole lot more if you see a combination PowerPoint presentation, talking head presentation, than if it's just all talking head. So what people do, they find that they have simple PowerPoint tools, but once they start creating PowerPoints, and they might watch a few YouTube videos on how to do a few things in it and that kind of thing, they start picking up new skills. Usually when the person that you're working for, the freelance buyer, says, hey, can you make this slide fade into that slide? And you say, I'm not sure, but if you say how to make a PowerPoint slide fade into the next slide, there's going to be a 3-minute YouTube video that's going to show you exactly how to do that. So when you start working on these very simple jobs in the realm of PowerPoint, you're going to be growing your skills. And this is the thing that most baby boomers are surprised with. All of us have not had a real enjoyable relationship. In fact, I know one guy that calls it his personal confuser rather than personal computer. But it's a great, we had to go from, voicemail messages written on a pink pad and talking on the telephone and dialing numbers and all that kind of stuff, even in the days before email, many of us, and to this whole new digital world. But we made it, and we do know how to send email now, and we do know how to buy a book on Amazon. And a lot of the systems that you'll be working with online are similar in that way, is that you can just jump on them and go and refine and improve your skills by doing work for live people. One of the worst things in my mind to do in trying to learn a product is to sit down and have to go through courses. And because a lot of the courses, particularly on different products that we all use and know how to use, you have to go through the stuff you already know to get to the stuff you don't know. And it could take you an hour or two of just going through things to figure out where that is. But when you're working for a client, and it's not like they're demanding big things outside the scope of what you understand how to do, but if you work with half a dozen clients making PowerPoints, you're going to learn a little bit from each one, because they're all going to have different preferences. Some of them will be style preferences. Some of them will be the way the graphics fit on the screen, the way the borders work, and all that kind of thing. And when you're sort of eating your new knowledge with a teaspoon, it's a whole lot easier than eating it with a big scoop, all at once. So that's really one of the things that I recommend people do. And I love to hear the surprise reaction that people that say they know how to do it. And the last one is another huge area. It's in the area of doing research online. And, this is not with a lab coat and a microscope. This is researching things because, in some sense, sadly, but in many senses, good for you, is that most people, all they know how to do is use Google by typing in whatever word or phrase they want to do. And there's all kinds of things that called operators. Like if you want to find all the articles that appeared in the New York Times about a certain drug that was released in the year before and the year after that drug was released, there are things within Google that you can use. But most people don't understand that, and they just use Google as type something in and look something up. And there's never been a greater demand, for example, to verify things. I mean, we all know fake news. It's out there every day. We see it every day. A news story come out, oh, this happened. And then, 3 days later, a week later, 10 days later, a story comes out and say, oh, we thought this happened, but it didn't really happen. This is what really happened, and the story is completely different. And there are people looking up. We have a program, a training program on doing research, and this is especially good for people that. And the reason we built this program is not everybody likes to do PowerPoints or what we call working with words, writing articles, doing uh, uh, research of one kind, or doing editing of one kind or another. So this research product is much more focused on the person that really has an intellectual curiosity. Usually they say coming in that they're pretty good at searching things on Google. They do a few tricks more than most people do. But then once they go through our program, they know a whole lot more than people know how to do typically. And so the research area has just exploded. It's anything from people wanting to research something like clinical trials. I mean, there's a whole clinical trial database out there that you can type in conditions and find clinical trials anywhere in the world, for people that have a certain condition or that kind of thing. And I mean, it's not, weird or strange conditions. A lot of it's pretty simple stuff. There are other people, especially now coming out of the pandemic, that are building their businesses up to where they were before the pandemic. And the landscape has changed. They need to interact with their customers in a different way, and they have to pay attention to all kinds of new laws, both state and local, as well as national and even international, in terms of being compliant with, protection against transferring germs and viruses and all that kind of stuff. So there's a whole new world of that kind of stuff going on. They need a whole new set of marketing strategies, because what they had before might be completely different. Figuring out how do people in the laundry business, how are they changing their businesses going forward to be more compatible with a whole health and safety environment that's now come out. So researching is one of the fun ways to put that together. One of the things you want to focus on when you're doing that research, because many years ago I hired a freelancer to do some research for me. And, I don't know, paid them $50 or $60. And they put the phrase in Google and then cut and paste all the search inquiries, or the first 100, into a Word document and sent that to me. And, the thing that we teach you in that program, our research program, is that's not what your buyer wants. Your buyer wants that information organized in a way that makes sense and gives the buyer what we would call actionable information. And that's what we're going for. I could have thrown that in there and done that, and that would have been okay. And I could have had the same result. I didn't need to put a job up on Upwork and all that kind of stuff. And I want to give a shout out to Joe. Appreciate the like. Thanks for that. It's always good to see a like. And so this research area is a little bit more than Googling, but it's not a lot more. And it's one of the topic areas that we've found that people get into, and they move pretty fast. They get the hang of it. They realize what the client wants. One of the things that we put in that product is a thing called a client questionnaire. What are the questions that you ask a client when you sit down with them to do a research project? Like one of the questions that we always ask, they want you to research a certain area. And we say, what other websites do you like in this area? And then we ask them, what other websites do you not like in this area? So we can look at those websites and get a sense of that. And of course, that our members are now using that same questionnaire with their clients. And it helps the freelancer that's doing the research work come off as an intelligent, informed, prepared person to go through this 20 or 30 minute questioning session to just fully understand what the freelance buyer wants for that search. And that's one of the big areas that people really make a mistake when they do research type work, is they don't get a clear idea of what the buyer is looking for, and most importantly, how the buyer is going to use that information. Are they using it to locate a site for a new business? Are they using it to put it into a presentation that they're giving? Are they using it to put on their web page in some form so that they can sell more products and services that they sell from that web page? So those are our three real good ways that surprise people that, hey, I'm doing this thing that I never thought I'd be doing, because they get in and they find that, number one, they like it. Number two, the buyer helps grow their creativity. And I was once had talked to somebody who was, considering our product and another proofreading product, and they were going to take, I think it was a 6-month long course in proofreading. And then, the thought was they would go into one of these networks and proofread. And I suggested, just go in there and take the simple jobs and learn Grammarly and start doing that. You'll be much further ahead. And instead of going into a virtual classroom for 6 months, you're actually working with live human beings, and you're unfolding this, at a much faster rate. Most people buying proofreading are not looking for all those crazy curly cues and side arrows and check marks with circles and all that kind of stuff. That's the way they did proofreading 30 years ago. Now everybody just uses Microsoft Track Corrections. Very easy to use. You can watch a video for 5 or 10 minutes, and you probably use Microsoft Word every week, so you know how to use that. You've used it for years. This is just an option on one of their menus that you've never happened to look at. It's very easily understood, literally by watching a 5 or 10 minute video, and you're off to the races, rather than getting into this analysis paralysis mode of, I got to go back to school, I got to brush up, I got to learn this new thing, I haven't done it in a while. Just take the easiest jobs you can. All the jobs on almost all of these networks are grouped into beginner jobs, intermediate jobs, and advanced jobs. And once you read the job, then you decide whether that would be a beginner job for you or an intermediate job for you, because there is no standardization of what those terms mean. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. Bend your ear on taking a creativity look at this whole thing. And I'm again reminded by Bob. I mean, Bob created a program. Oh, that's interesting. We got our Jeannie and James. Let's see. My client first took me on as a beginner, paid me very little, and taught me how to get the job done. So this is a great way to learn. This is a perfect example. I think this is Jeannie talking. $15 for 1,500 words. Crazy. You never want to make a career doing that, but you might, as a starter job, do that to learn how to do something. You're going to school with every job you do, as Jeannie points out here, I think. Wrote 5 articles and moved on with his thanks, got excellent testimonials, and today she earns what she wants, and she's one of our course members. She got started with us, I think it was about 3 years ago, if memory serves me. And yes, bingo. Okay, very good. And this is the thing. This is the wisdom. So many people roll into this and they're just, I got to earn this money, and they're not looking at the big picture, and they're not looking at the big opportunity here. It's an opportunity to really grow your skills, learn new things, keep your brain active. And there's just so much in the scientific literature coming out about how longevity is enhanced by staying mentally active. And I get this question a lot of times in my workshops and when we go to a conference and that kind of thing. And in fact, I'll be in Panama here in another month, I guess, or less than a month now. And somebody will say, well, gee, I'm not sure if my skills are good enough. I mean, you just go in and try, just see what it is. Take a really, a low paying job with modest expectations. You'll learn a ton. You'll help a fellow human being get down the road a little bit. You'll make a little money. And once you get half a dozen jobs under your belt, and like Jeannie says, the testimonials are worth their weight in gold. Other people be able to see you did the job and the buyer was happy with what you did and that kind of thing. So lots of goodness flows from that. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. If you have any questions, if you'll drop them in the chat, we follow the chat through the week, and we'll be back here next Friday with another Freelance Friday. So have a great week freelancing. Take care.